Barbara Kendall, welcome to my podcast.
Good to be here.
Barbara Kendall, I'll do a slightly awkward introduction. I won't do the whole thing though. New Zealand Sportswoman of the Year, 96, 98, 99, 2002. First New Zealand woman to go to 5 Olympics and a rainbow of medals, gold, silver and bronze. Only New Zealand gold medalist from the 92 Olympics and the first woman in 40 years to win a gold. 11 World Championship medals and 25 national titles.
It's quite a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, and no, the thing is with these awkward introductions, for you, that's just like scratching the surface. Like there is so much more.
Yeah, that was my athlete life. So when I look at, I sort of divide my life into 4 years. So every Olympic cycle, and that's how I remember it actually, is by these Olympic cycles. But it continued after when I retired in Beijing in 2008. I continued within the Olympic movement in lots of different roles. And we've just got to the end of one in 2024. So yeah, it's been a long career in sport.
Yes, so much admin, including the chef de mission for one of the games.
Yeah, so I was a chef de mission for the Youth Olympic Games in Buenos Aires in 2018, which was an amazing job. Amazing and kind of scary all at the same time because you're dealing with 14 to 18-year-olds, and so you become liable for their behaviour.
What does that mean? Oh, so are you just like giving them a dressing down or expectation speech?
Well, you know, you're responsible for them. Their parents sign their lives away, sign their kids away, and I become the mum or the parent of, I think we had 65 athletes for that Olympic Games, but they were an amazing bunch of youth athletes, and we had a few wobbles, but it was such a privilege to lead these kids to the Olympic Games, and we had a very successful games there.
Fantastic. My first question would be, how much of your life do you think has spent waiting at oversized luggage counters at airports? It's a very inconvenient sport in terms of the gear you're travelling around with.
It is. And once I'd finished competing and I started to serve the Olympic movement, because that's what they call it, because it's a voluntary role, and just travelling with one bag, it was just like, I think I've forgotten something. But, you know, it was interesting because one of the reasons I got into windsurfing at the very beginning, because I could have chosen a lot of sailing sports, is because they supplied the equipment when you turned up to a regatta and it was all one design, which was really easy. So I would go to our first World Championships, all the boards were supplied, and I just flew with a bag. This was when I was 16 years old and went to Scotland. But then to make a living out of it, I needed to compete in the professional circuit where it was custom-made equipment and you were competing in 3 disciplines and you had to supply all your own equipment. So I went from travelling with nothing to travelling with 6 boards, 14 sails, masts, booms, gear bags, wetsuits. And it was close to probably around 250 kilograms worth of stuff. And so you rock up to the counter and go, oh yeah, I'd just like to check in 8 eggs and say it really fast. And then, but you wouldn't show them where it is. Yeah, they're over there. Where would you like me to take them? I can tag them for you. But back then you could get away with it. You know, we had masts that were 4.5 meters long, but now they can't fit those into the airplane holds. But yeah, there was a definite talent.
Who were you travelling with? Who was giving you a hand?
Nobody. So in the early days when I started on the professional circuit, so I was the only New Zealander competing on the tour. And so I was travelling as a young, early 20s, late teens around the world with 250, 300 kilograms worth of equipment. And then you'd get to the other side and you'd have to rent a car, and I had to get someone else to rent a car for me because I was too young to rent cars. And then we'd pile all our gear on top of the roof, or the organiser would supply a truck and we'd have to pick all these bags up. But most of the time, the guides never helped us. The girls, we would just have to team up and do it ourselves. So it was really hard work.
So having, I suppose at the time you just did it and you didn't really think much about it, but having being the mum of 2 daughters who are now past that age that you were, did you sort of look at them at those ages and think, how the fuck did I do this?
Oh, totally. I mean, when I went to my first World Championships, I was 16 and my sister was 18. We'd both qualified to go to this Women's World Champs. We'd never been on an airplane. So we were flying to LA first because the Olympics in Los Angeles had just happened. And there was a friendly American guy who'd rented his house to the sailing team. And so we went and stayed with him. We went to Disneyland because that had been a childhood dream. And then we had to catch a plane from there to London. Then we had to catch trains to Largs in Scotland. I'd never been overseas apart from sailing our boat. And we had no parents to help us, find where the airplane we were to catch from the gate, catching the trains, turning up at the train station, and then figuring out how to, wheel our bag. We didn't even have wheelie bags back then. Carry our bags to where the hotel was. Never heard foreign languages. I was fresh off the boat, and my mum and dad just let us go. We had traveller's checks. Didn't have phones.
Yeah, it's worth hammering this point home. So 84, this is well pre-internet. So even a phone call back home to let them know you're okay was probably like $15 a minute or something.
You had to, remember you'd go into the red telephone box, you'd call the operator would then call the operator in New Zealand. The operator in New Zealand would then call the parents and say, will you take a collect call? And mum and dad would say no because they had no money. They'd spent all their money helping us girls get over to the World Champs. They were like, well, we only want to talk to you if it's, important. And we have a motto in our family, no news is good news.
Oh my God.
That was the
we haven't
motto.
heard from Barbara for 3 months. It must be good.
Yes.
Or she's dead.
Yeah, one of those. But we did have a thing that when you were leaving a country to ring them up, and when you arrived at that country safely to ring them up. And that was the
expectation.
Yeah.
So you're 57 now? You just recently turned 57. How are you enjoying this chapter, this season of your life?
It's frustrating.
In what way?
Anyway, and the fact that I want to be as good as I used to be, and when you go sailing or I go surfing or I go foiling or I've just got to wind it back because the risk of an injury. Your brain thinks you're 21, but your body's no, it's 57. And so it's that part's a little bit, you have to adjust to that, and the fact that I have nana naps every now and then because I actually get really tired.
Right.
And I think for women, no one tells you about menopause, and you go into that, sort of been going through the cycles of that over the last 10 years, and that really knocks you around because I just cruised through until I hit that. The menopause, and then your hormones go crazy, which makes you go a bit cray-cray. Your brain goes a bit more foggy, you need a bit more sleep, you have to look after your body because your joints get sore, all those sorts of things. But I seem to have got that under control. So life is actually pretty good, but it's just that I think that age thing throws you around a little bit. But also it's amazing having adult children now and living vicariously through them.
Yeah, are you and your husband empty nesters? No, or you're still sort of hanging on to the free rent?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I would too if I was them.
Yeah, right.
My brother didn't leave home until he was 48.
Is that right, Bruce?
Yeah, with 2 kids and a wife, and he finally moved out. And there's nothing wrong with it. Fun. If you get on with your parents and they're cool, then it's the only way you're going to get ahead now, I think, if you're a young person, is to flatmate with your parents.
Yeah. So your girls are how old?
They're now 19 and 23.
Right, and they both represent New Zealand in water polo and...
So my oldest is a New Zealand women's water polo squad, and my youngest is doing wind foiling. And they both went to World Champs last year. Amazing.
God, you must be immensely proud. How, I don't know if this is something you've even discussed or even thought about, but it's a lot of pressure for them growing up with the Kendall name.
Well, interesting. They don't have the Kendall name. So,
okay.
So
they're bright.
Yeah, they're bright.
Your husband's name.
Yes, and I think I don't know. When they were born, I'm like, no, they'll be Samantha Bright and Amy Bright. And so when they went to school, they didn't have my name, so people couldn't say, oh, you're a Kendall, is it your mum?
Get you in the water.
Yeah, or get you into sport or whatever it may be. And so they had their own identity. My oldest daughter probably got a little bit more of it, are you going to follow in the footsteps of your mother? Got a lot of that. And so when she was about 10, I thought, well, I've got to teach her to windsurf because that's my job. And so I drove her down to Lake Pupuki, and she's a really amazing listener. And I gave her the instructions of the basic tips of how you stand on the board, how you pull the rig up, the golden rules. And so I gave a verbal lesson, got her down to the lake, threw her on a board. She jumped on the board, sailed out, went round a mark and sailed back and went, oh yeah, I can do that. And I went, wow, that's crazy talented. So gave her a bigger rig. She did the same thing. So then she just went as fast as she could and just practiced falling in because it was so much fun. And then she looked at me in the eye and she said, Mum, don't get too excited or don't get mad, but I'm not going to ever race on one of these like you did. And that was the end of that.
Why? Why, she was bored or just didn't...
No, because people were always coming up to her and say, you're going to follow in the footsteps of your mum. And she just sort of recognised that she didn't want to, she'd never be able to compete reputational-wise, and she's quite competitive because you don't want to be compared to your mother. But by the time Amy came along, she grew up sailing with Russell Coutts' son. And so it's just like, well, Matthias can do it, I can do it. And it was very normalised. And Russell and I were hanging around and coaching the kids when they were young, sailing small boats. And she just it didn't really compute. She didn't really know what I had done through the years. I'd never really talked to the girls about everything that I'd done, but they thought it was strange that all these people would always come up and talk to me. They were like, who's that, Mum? And I'm going, I'm not sure. And they go, why are they talking to you? And I said, well, they know me. I said, why, Mum? And I've said, well, I've kind of get recognised because I was quite good at sport. So I didn't really tell them a lot, and that's been coming out over the years. Yeah,
when did they sort of get to that age where they had an understanding of who their mum was and what she had done?
Not until they were teenagers.
Really?
They kind of knew at the Olympics, but because I was an International Olympic Committee member, one of the benefits of that, you could bring your kids to the Olympic Games. So, Samantha went to Beijing, London, and Rio, and it was in Rio they went, oh, this is pretty cool. And then they were disappointed they couldn't go to Japan. But so they'd been in and around the Olympic Games, but it was normalised for them a little bit. And then it wasn't until, well, for my youngest one, when she got into windsurfing, that she started to realise that I'd been quite good. And probably at the World Champs last year when we were in Brazil, and she was at the Youth World Champs, and she had a really bad first day. And I knew it was happening because I'd been coaching her, and she was in a pit, and I know she was going to choke with too much pressure, putting too much pressure and expectation on herself. And she came back to the beach and she was crying, and I sat down with her and she goes, Mum, you must have been really good because this is so hard. I don't think I'm ever going to be good enough. And I went, yes, it was hard. And yes, I was really good. And yes, you know what? You can give up if you want. It doesn't matter because this is not what it's about. And I said, you are good. And this is fun. We're in Brazil. You've had a really bad day because you put too much pressure on yourself. How about you just go home, have some really good food, hang out in the pool with all the other kids, come back tomorrow and see what will happen, and just forget about today. It is hard. You know what? And it doesn't matter. And then the next day she came back and she won the day's racing. But she had a lot of bad results on that first day, so she couldn't discard them. But she started to really realise that I must have cracked a few.
Yeah, right. Validation, eh? It's a good reminder. Mum was pretty fucking good.
Back then.
So were you like, how much of it was natural talent and how much of it was hard work with you?
In the beginning, I have a natural talent. I have a superpower for balance. Even foiling nowadays, as a 57-year-old woman, I can jump on a foil and surf the waves like I was this morning.
Wow.
So I did have it, and I think that came from being a bit of a dancer and being very agile. So I have a really good balance, and then I have a really good feel for how to make things go fast. So when I jumped on a windsurfer or a boat or a skateboard or a snowboard or a whatever, it is a natural talent for me, easy. But then I have a tenacity and a fiercely competitive spirit and drive, and I was born with that.
Yeah, because there's that saying that hard work beats talent if talent doesn't work hard. So at that elite level, like talent or natural talent is only going to get you so far, right?
Yeah.
And you and your brother and your sister as well. There's three of you, right? You never had a chance, did you? Like you're a water family.
Yeah. So my mum and dad met sailing at a regatta. Both of them just absolutely loved sailing. Mum wasn't competitive. She was really gentle. And really an amazing mother. She was like the rock and the hub of our family. But my dad was was very competitive, but in a good way. He just loved the challenge of a sailing race, because the tactical game it is. It's like playing chess with Mother Nature and other people, and he loved that. And he also loved adventuring, so he built a boat in 1975 and sailed all of us to Fiji when I was 10. My sister was 12 and my brother was 13.
Oh, yeah, I heard about this. So, I mean, this could have been the fork in the road moment where you were terrified of the ocean or terrified to go. Yeah, what happened?
So on the way back, a really big storm hit us, and we had to hove to. So in a sailboat, that means pulling down all the sails with just the mast up. So you ride out the storm, because if you put a sail up, you could roll or tip over. And it was a little boat. It was only a 32-foot yacht, and it wasn't an ocean-going boat, so it had very low sides on it, which meant that the spray came over very easily. And it was so windy, we were still going 6 knots in a direction that we had no idea where we were going, because Dad couldn't navigate, because we only had a sextant for navigation. There was no GPSs or anything like that nowadays. He was also really seasick, and we had to put a sea anchor out, like a big drove, behind the boat to slow the boat down and keep the nose or the stern of the boat into the waves, because if you go sideways, there was such big swells out there, the boat would have rolled. We would have been demasted, gone into a life raft, and no one would have found us, because we didn't have EPIRBs and things like that. That would have been a very sad story. But we made our way home. We survived it, and that put Mum and Dad off ocean-going sailing. And I think if we'd had a good time, because Mum was a school teacher, perhaps we would have got into a bigger boat and then started sailing around the world like a lot of families do. And become boat people,
You were sort of burnt after that. What are your personal memories of that as a 10-year-old? Did your parents did you realize at the time how dire the situation was, or did your parents sort of manage to?
Well, amazingly enough, I think when you go through a trauma. Well, I know that when you go through a trauma, a lot of it gets blocked out, and you'll only remember certain things. And I remember Mum coming in after her watch, and she was shaking, and I thought, oh, Mum must be cold, I'll give her a cuddle. So I would snuggle into her and sing, and I was naturally really happy. But now when I reflect, she was obviously shaking because she was so scared. But they never yelled at each other. I was very sensitive to conflict, and Mum and Dad never spoke strong, if they spoke strong words, it was very respectful. And yeah, they weren't, but when Dad tells the story, he goes, yeah, we were knocked over 7 times. So knockover is when the boat goes right over into its side, the mast just about touches the water, and you bounce back up again because you have a lead weight underneath.
Oh my God.
So I don't remember that.
What about your brother? So he was on
he
the
was
boat
seasick as well.
You were 10 at the time, so he would have been 13.
He was 13, and my sister, she loves the wild. We called her Wild Wendy, and she did a lot of the watches with my mum.
So it wasn't wild enough for her.
No, she was out the back. Woohoo! Let's go!
Yeah. Jeez, I heard you tell the story on another podcast, and You knew you were near land because you had an AM transistor, and when you could pick up a radio signal, you realised you were. But you had no idea where you were in relation to land or what countries.
No, we didn't. So Dad lost sight of where we were because he couldn't get a reading of the sun, because there was no sun. We were in a storm, and we had a transistor radio, and it was a cheap one that we'd bought in Fiji, which was a prized item. If you had a transistor radio, that was prized. But when you held it, it would go. So he knew that it was picking up a radio beacon somewhere, and it lined up with the compass bearing that Dad had, which was what we had to try and stay on. He thought we'd missed the top of New Zealand, and we're coming down the other side, but it was we were lucky. It was the Poor Knights. So our Poor Knights was our landing.
It's amazing you don't have any sort of triggers or PTSD or anything. That's a harrowing thing to go through.
Yeah, but I didn't know that. I didn't know.
Yeah, ignorance is bliss.
Absolutely. You just think, oh, this is normal. Mum and Dad aren't freaking out. We'll just, so kids are very resilient. Kids are amazing, that's, after being a parent and dragging the girls around the world with us and sleeping in airplanes and cars and all those sorts of things. And if you're happy, your kids are happy. If you're stressed, they're like little mirrors. All of a sudden, they get really stressed. You know, it's amazing.
Yeah, but for your parents to put on a brave face and hide their
Fear,
stress and fear from you guys in a 10-metre long boat, I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, if people ask, who are your heroes, and my mum and dad, 85 they're now, and they still go away in that boat. Sunlight.
Oh, really? God, I'd put the boat out to retirement after that. Never
they still
again.
go away for 3 months. And then last year in Cyclone Gabriel, they were up in Whangaroa Harbour, right up the far north. And I rang them and said, Dad, one of the biggest cyclones of the century is about to hit. I think it might be good if you and Mum make your way to a marina. No, I've been coming up here for 30 years. We're going to ride out the storm. And I'm like, Dad, you are 84 at the time. You don't... Mum pulls up the anchor. Mum's not going to be able to pull the anchor up in 50, 60 knots while you try and get yourself somewhere safe. But they got in mooring. They hooked up to the mooring. And then when the wind changed, because it goes round in a circle, they went round the point headland and got another mooring, and they rode out the storm. And Mum was sending me videos of white squalls and the boat just swinging and swinging back and forth on the mooring. Crazy.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. That's great. So your brother Bruce, he won a bronze medal at the 84 Olympic Games in LA. And so how old were you at the time? Were you still at school?
I was still at school. So I remember being in a maths class. So I was...
like sixth form? Fifth form?
Yeah, fifth form I think it was. Sixth form because I ended up going overseas after that. Sixth form I was in maths, and the maths teacher said, hey, Barbara, your brother's on TV and looks like he might win a medal. So I got pulled out.
You didn't get the day off school?
No, we didn't have TV.
Oh.
So they pulled me. I got pulled out of maths class, and I was able to watch him win the race on TV at school.
How do your parents not get a TV if your son's competing at the Olympic Games?
I don't know.
We're just not a TV family.
No, we're not
outdoorsy.
a TV family because I remember we had a TV. It was a black and white one, and you had to have a license to have the TV. You may not remember that. And we never paid the license because Mum and Dad, we lived on the smell of an oily rag, so they didn't pay the license. And if you didn't pay the license, they'd come up and they'd plastic bag up your plug so you couldn't use it. But then you could just open the plastic plug and use it.
Yeah, I was thinking as you were telling that sounds flawed.
I know it was. And then our neighbours had a TV, so I'd go and watch their TV. Occasionally, but we didn't really watch a lot of TV. We were busy doing things.
How was that? So, what are your recollections of seeing Bruce win that medal?
Well, I just thought, oh, that's pretty cool. I don't know. He was away a lot, because he was. When you campaign, you can't sail in New Zealand because we didn't have the fleets. So he spent most of his time in America. So he'd be away for 6 months in America. Trying to qualify New Zealand in this new class and this new sport, and so we didn't see him a lot. And I suppose because I hadn't watched a lot of TV, it was amazing that it was at the Olympic Games, but it was just it's the Olympics. I didn't have a fangirl moment, if that makes sense, in a way. And it was just like, wow, that's cool, good on him. And then I carried on with my little life, It's bizarre.
So it didn't seem like a huge thing to you, or
no, it was just
it wasn't a moment that sort of inspired you to.
Well, he was talented. He was extremely talented, and I thought, oh well, good on him.
We knew he was good. How about that?
Yeah, how about that?
Third in the world.
He just got third. He's just got and he was. When he was 16, he hated being in the boat with us because we'd go away in our mum and dad's boat, and he was 16 and I was 13. And instead of being in the boat, he windsurfed beside the boat all the way down to Tauranga.
He's probably traumatised after the Fiji thing.
Yeah, and exactly, didn't want to be in the boat, he wanted to windsurf. And so that was a really amazing platform for him to be. So when he started racing, he was just so skilled and talented. He had a gift as well.
So who were your role models growing up, sporting wise? Who was there for you?
Well, there wasn't really any. No, I mean,
like Dame Susan, maybe.
Yeah, but I didn't really know much about Dame Susan until after I'd won the gold medal. Because I was overseas for 8 months of the year competing on a professional windsurfing circuit, and so I wasn't in and around New Zealand. I didn't watch TV. There was no internet. if you read the newspaper, that was good, but I was very in my own bubble. And so it was really just my tribe of people that were in my bubble where I was competing. And my brother, obviously, if it hadn't been for him, I wouldn't have fast-tracked as fast as I did for Barcelona.
Yeah, I suppose he was like a trailblazer for you in a way. And,
he was. And I thought, my brother's windsurfing. He's sort of like moulded my parents in the fact that we're not going to go to college, we're not going to go to university, and I want to do this too. And there was the professional circuit had prize money, and I was like, I could make a living out of this. And so that was the draw card for me.
I've got a photo here to show you. This is you on the podium, getting a gold medal at the 92 Olympics. How do you feel when you see that?
I was a bit crazy.
But you see photos of you at the next two Olympic Games, 96 in Atlanta and 2000 in Sydney. So that's 92 where you get a gold, then you get a silver, then a bronze. The bronze one's a bit more subdued, but the silver one is exactly the same reaction as when you get gold. You were very excitable, eh?
I was high energy. So I had a lot of energy. My mum always wanted to have 4 kids. And then she had me, and she decided 3 was enough. So I was kind of like a high energy, and I was one of those kids that when I decided I wanted something, you couldn't stop. But I was really happy. So I was a happy, energetic kid. And so, but I figured also out that if I was happy, I always sold the best when I was happy. So I learnt how to keep myself happy from a very, very young age, even travelling around the world, and some of the stories, getting passports stolen, being stuck in Paris, no passport, no money, all my valuables gone, and picking yourself up, after a weekend of hanging around Paris and sleeping in strange places to wait till the embassy to open so you can get going again, and realising that when I was vibrating at a high resonance, I was going to win. So that is really just pure.
Yeah.
From I did it.
Do you feel like when you see that photo, do you feel like the same person, or does it just feel like so far removed?
No, I'm still really crazy.
Yeah.
In fact,
we like crazy.
That's why I like having, being a mum of my daughters, because I was the crazy mum. And they're used to it now. And so we dance around the kitchen, we skateboard around the lounge, we hit the dance floor as soon as there's good music. We live, and that's what I love hanging out with them, because I feel like I can be a kid around them and just not grow up and be sensible.
Just that youthful energy. Yeah, I put on Instagram that you're coming here, and did anyone have any questions? And someone said, I'm guessing it's someone that knows you and your brother. They said, ask her about the parties. Her and Bruce used to always be the people throwing parties.
Yeah, because it's not that I didn't drink very much, and we couldn't do drugs because you're in this testing pool. But when you put music on, I couldn't stand still, and my brother was the same. And I remember when we were kids and we would go for a night out with our parents, we would go to a dine and dance. And so they would have a band at the restaurant that you'd going to. So as soon as we'd finished your dinner, we would all get up onto the dance floor and start dancing. And now it's so bizarre because you don't see that anymore. You have to go clubs. But there's something about music that there's a vibe that runs through your body, and that would just come out of me. My first memories as a young kid was music, and we had the record player, and our lounge was the only tidy room in the house, and we weren't allowed to go in there as kids, but I was only allowed to go there if I was playing music and dancing. So I'd go in there, put the record player on, Carmen, listen to Bolero, and I would dance around the lounge at 3 years old for hours and hours just to music.
Yeah.
Is that weird? I don't know.
No, from what I can gather, your first job was a dance teacher as well.
Yeah.
And somehow you only finished second on Dancing with the Stars, but we'll get to that later. But I feel like that was, if windsurfing didn't become a thing, I feel like dancing would have been the...
Yeah, it was. It definitely was. And so Mum was like, wow, I really need to send her to dancing. So when I was 8, there was a school that had just formed called the Julie Cotter Dancers, and I went into that, and it was just like, this is me. I'm going to be a dancer, and my whole life was around dancing. So interestingly enough, windsurfing is like dancing on the water.
Oh, that's something quite poetic about that.
It is. I mean, it is. It's like you have to be really agile. You have to feel the wind. You've got the wishbone, which is the balance, and it's like a dance on the water.
Okay, so let's go to Barcelona. So December the 23rd, the year before, you're involved in a big accident. What happens? A boat runs over you or something?
Yeah, so we were surfing. So that's kind of what you see a lot of people doing now is tow, wakeboarding. But we were doing it, now they'd use a jet ski, but we were doing it in an old dungaree boat, a wooden boat, in the surf up at Mongawai, and where you pull someone in on a surfboard behind the boat, and then you pull them into the wave, and then they surf the wave in, and away you go, so you don't have to paddle. And then I was spotting, and the boat got caught in a wave, and usually the boat would tip, but the boat tipped over, washed me out, and then ran back over the top of me, and the bottom of the motor hit my wrist on my scaphoid bone and shattered it. And when it hit my wrist, I went, ow, and then I felt the propeller go shh on my leg, bang on my leg, like I was wearing a wetsuit. And when I came up, I looked at my wrist, and there was a gaping hole. And I went, oh, shit, that doesn't look good.
Yeah, so this is 2 days before Christmas, and in 2021, so you're going into the Olympic year. You'd already qualified for the Olympics? So
No.
Okay.
So
you weren't straight away like, oh, this is it, my Olympic dream's over.
I never even went there with my brain. It was just like, oh, better get that fixed quickly so I can get back out on the water again. And that's pretty much how no sort of shivers. Well, that's going to hold me back a little bit. I didn't have a comprehension of what I'd actually done, and then went to the Whangarei hospital. And they just stitched it up and put it into a cast. And then a windsurfing intern came in and said, hey, I know who you are. I've looked at your x-rays. If you don't go and see a specialist, I don't know if your wrist will heal, because you've done damage to the scaphoid bone, which is the one bone in your body where it takes longer to heal because the blood has to go one way, turn around and come back out. It's a floating bone. And said, you need to go and see a specialist. And so I rang the doctor straight away, and he said, don't tell anyone I've told you, because I could lose my job because seniority. So rang my doctor, got out of Whangarei. We were able to get hold of a specialist, and he came in on, I think it was Christmas Eve, and he said, Barbara, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to windsurf again. The nature, you've shattered it. So and if it's infected, I'll just have to close it up and that'll be it. If it's not infected, I'll have to screw and pin it, and I'm not sure if you're about to windsurf again. And I was like, I didn't really hear that. And
well, you just didn't want to believe it.
No, I didn't want to believe it.
Yeah.
It was just like, wow, this doesn't happen to people like me. I've got a lucky star. So refused to believe it for a start, and kept myself really fit because I knew that the pending Olympic trials were coming up in February. And it was a trial where there was, if you won the trials, you got to the Olympic Games. And when they'd heard that I'd broken my wrist, they're like, oh boy, we can't really have Barbara not competing because she's the benchmark for windsurfing in New Zealand. I was a world champion. I just got second in an event in America on the Olympic class board. So I was right up there. And so they did it was a big hoo-ha. I went to the courts and all sorts of things, but Yachting New Zealand delayed the trials, and that gave me a little bit more time to heal. They delayed them till April, I think it was, so it gave me a couple of months to heal. And fortunately, when I came out of the cast, even though my arm was like a chicken wing, I was actually able to hang on and put a bit of pressure through it. And so I had then another 3 weeks or so, and then entered into the trials, and thank goodness I won.
Geez, was that a stressful time?
Incredibly stressful time. I just had to really practice mindset and not go into the rabbit hole of, oh my God, what am I going to do if I can't windsurf? And so it was actually a really good time, because during those times you do a lot of reflection. So sometimes injuries are a special time. Everything happens for a reason, firm believer in that, and it's a time to sit down. I was going like a headless chock, and this was the last accident of a few of them that had happened to me leading up until this moment. And I had to stop and really reflect about, okay, what does my life look like and what do I really want? And so I got engaged to my husband during that time, because he was just like, well, he says, I don't care if you can't windsurf again, I just love you for who you are. And I'm like, wow, you're a really nice guy. You're a keeper. And we're still married today. So, and he was my coach. So, yeah, that was really cool. And then we were like, well, if I can't windsurf anymore, the only other thing I can do is dance. Maybe I'll start up a dance school of my own. And so I started looking for industrial buildings to say, well, if I buy a big industrial building, then I can have any business I like in an industrial building. That was my mentality. So spent a lot of my time driving around looking at industrial buildings, and then I saw there was an old church that came up for sale, and I thought, that is perfect. So I bought an old church. I borrowed the money off Mum and Dad because I didn't have a lot, and thought, well, at least I've got something, And then, so it was a good time because it put those roots down, which gave me the wings to really fly afterwards.
What did you end up doing with the building?
Lived in it. So we lived in a church for a long time. Had our after wedding party there, and then I sold it to my brother actually, and he still lives in it today.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah,
amazing. So these big races like Barcelona and then the Olympics that followed, like mentally, what were you like before these races? Like, were you a bundle of nerves? Is there a lot of pressure?
No, well, I had no pressure because it was the first time women's windsurfing was in the Olympic Games. So there was a blank canvas.
Yeah, but going into a world champ.
I was a world champ in a different class. It was a different class. So windsurfing's really complex because there's many different things that you can do. It's not it's like cycling. We can have road cycling, track cycling, sprints, peloton, whatever.
The Kieran. What's the Kieran?
All those things, all those fancy names. Windsurfing's the same. So I've been jumping from wave sailing in the waves and big waves, slalom racing where you're going as fast as you can downwind, course racing which you go around buoys, which is similar to the Olympic class, but all on different boards. So I was very multi-dimensional in what I could do. And so I'd won a world champs in a different type of board. And then I had to learn the Olympic class, which was a very difficult board to sail actually. It had a rounded bottom on it, and it was very, very tippy. So it was kind of new, and I hadn't spent a lot of time of it because I'd been competing on the pro circuit. I needed to earn money, and I'd allowed myself, a year, but that had been cut short with the wrist, and then so I had a very, very intense build up, 4 months until the games, but I had the best coach in the world, training partner of Bruce and coach of Grant Beck, who would come and join us for the big events to be another set of eyes, and then Aaron McIntosh was the training partner. So we were like a real tight-knit team that was travelling around Europe leading up into Barcelona, and it was full on. I remember crying quite a lot, but I'd go, stop, Barbara, you're really lucky to be alive.
Crying because you were...
Frustration.
Okay.
Frustration with I'm not getting fast enough, a little bit homesick, when things aren't going so well, the first thing you do is get homesick, because you want to go back to your mum and get a big cuddle, still do that. and just, we didn't have a lot of money, so we had to, Bruce was really good at networking and finding people that would accommodate the Kiwis, because we didn't have money, and so we'd stay at different people's places, so sleeping on people's couches, lounge floors. We never stayed in a hotel because we never had enough money to pay for hotels. Sleeping on the car, sleeping in the car, sleeping on the ground, we always had sleeping bags with us. So it was intense. This is an Olympic campaign. Athletes wouldn't do that nowadays.
No. So it didn't feel like, from your perspective, there was like the weight of a nation on your shoulders? Or
No, because there was no internet, there was no... hadn't been on television. I've been under the radar. They don't put our sport on TV. The only weight was the fact that I wanted to be good enough. So actually, when I hit the Olympic Games, I could be the best I could be for my build-up. And then it was just like you get to the Olympic Games, and I go, this is just fun. I'm going to go out there and go yachting, because I'd done this professional circuit where I'd been competing every month for prize money, and if I didn't get in the top 5 in the world and place, then I wouldn't earn prize money that would get me to the next event, and I'd have to come home and I would have felt like I'd failed. So the Olympic Games was easy because
you're tough on yourself, aren't you?
Yeah, but I think most top athletes are. You have to be tough.
Yeah. No, but even at the start when I said, how do you feel about this chapter of your life being 57, you're like, oh, I can't do the things I feel like there's still that fiery 24-year-old inside there.
I think I'm probably still trailblazing in a way because, like wing foiling, for instance, which is the new sport, which is a small surfboard with a big foil on the bottom, and then you hold this wing that's free-flowing. I think many people might have seen that now because it's the fastest growing sport. So I picked that up 4 or 5 years ago, just because it was like, wow, this looks fun. And I'm so much gratitude the fact that I was young enough to pick that up because it's such an amazing sport to feel like you're flying above the water. Anyway, I entered into the Nationals this year, and I ended up winning the Grandmasters, the Masters, and the Open.
Oh my God.
Because there were no other girls competing.
Okay.
Well, there was, but most of them had never raced before and they were just doing it for fun. And then the top girls, which is my daughter and a few of the others, like Joali and stuff, they were all overseas, or my daughter had an injury. So I was the only girl racing in the race fleet that could race. And I ended up winning all 3 divisions.
To be fair, all the other competitors, like if they turned up and they saw Barbara Kendall on the start sheet, they probably erased their own names.
But it's
out.
also
Went home.
it's also a sport that not a lot of women do,
right?
And it's been like that ever since I took up windsurfing. It's a sport that it's not easy. And I used to feel a little bit like, well, maybe that my sport was easy because.
Easy for you, perhaps.
Easy for me, but there was no one else. No one really came through and behind. It was very rare that we would have more than 4 or 5 girls on a start line. Whereas if you're a runner, a cyclist, it's tough. But my sport, I was like lone wolf for many, 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 many years, and feels like a little bit still like that now.
Yeah. So. So the 92 Olympics, so there's a bunch of races, and so by the time you get to your final day, you need to finish in the top 6 in order to win the gold. Is that right?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
That's funny because people research that, and I had no idea. And because for me, it's the results are always irrelevant because you can my brain would start, I've got a 2nd and a 6th and an 8th. I wouldn't even be able to tell you where I placed. This is how I compete anyway. Everyone else is different. I wouldn't know. I'd know approximately where I was. I wouldn't know what the points were because my philosophy was I can only do what I can only do. And I'm going to go out there and race the best I can in every single race, and the rest just takes care of itself. I can't do anything more than that. So there's no use obsessing about results that you can't control. And we didn't have sports psychologists back then. You just figured it out for yourself, And so you just block out. I just used to block out there, and we're coming into the last race. Big deal for the Spanish girl. If she'd won, she would have been given $1 million, and a pension. A lot of them, if they win a medal, you get a pension for life, like the Greeks and the French girl, same thing. She'd been the world champion for the 3 years prior. So there's a lot of pressure and stress. And I was just like, man, I'm just lucky to be on the start line, after everything that I'd been through. And that was a place where you can let go, and all the way through, it's a week is a long time to compete. And every day you got to go out there and you got to pick yourself up and keep going and keep going and keep going. And I just cruised through, and the whole noise of the Olympic Games didn't really exist. And so I just did my thing and got to the start line, and all the girls for some reason were really aggressive on the start line, and a lot of them went over the girls that I had to beat. So, but I didn't know that. I just said, nope, away I go. And then, when I got to the finish line, I'm like, wow, all the horns going. People are yelling. I think I might have won. And that was like, wow, that's kind of cool.
Oh, so you didn't even it didn't occur to you during the race, like,
no.
Shit, if I don't mess this up, the gold medal's mine.
No idea.
You're just in the moment.
Just in the moment. I live, and they, when you start to look at psychology, and which I've done a lot now over the last sort of 20 years or so, that's exactly what you should be doing. It's you don't think about the future, don't think about the past. Be 100% in the moment. And go, wow, look at that. I think I might have won myself a gold.
So you're in the water. So you win the gold medal, but you're on your own until you. How do you get back in? You paddle back in.
I sailed back in. So when you cross the line, you sail back into the into the little marina at Barcelona, and there was like all these people standing on the ramp, and I'm going, okay, this is really weird. What do I do now? What happens now? And in the back of my mind, I'm like, I wonder how Bruce is done, because he'd just raced before us and he had broken his fin halfway through the regatta, and it was supplied equipment. Usually if you break something, then they'll give you average points for that race. And so I knew that he had to get into a certain place for him to medal, and he was right on the cusp. And so he was the first one that came down to the water, and he helped me take my rig off my board. And I think Ralph Roberts at the time said, get her on the board, we'll carry her out of the water. I'm like, okay.
You ever seen that? It's iconic footage. So it's you sort of being carried like a Cleopatra or something with a bottle of champagne.
Yeah.
So yeah. Do you remember that moment like it was yesterday? Or?
I remember, well, there's a few things I remember. So Bruce just sort of, he looked really happy, but I knew something because I hadn't been able to talk to him, how he'd done. And I think he might have said to me, Barbara, I just got fourth. And I just went, and then I was like, oh my God, what is happening? So it was a real paradox. It was this and it was that. And I remember being on the board, and Lisa Newberger, one of my friends who I'd been competing on the pro circuit with, who was at the Olympics as well, she had some Crucian rum in this tiny bottle, and she threw it at me, and I'd got it stuck in my eyes. And so I was like, that's all I remember, trying to get rum out of my eyes, and I had the champagne. It was weird. Just those funny things you do remember.
Yeah, and then then what happens? When's the medal ceremony?
So usually nowadays they have the medal ceremony very close after you've finished.
Yeah, like 20 minutes or something.
Yeah, but those days I think they waited till a few classes had finished, and then they do a bunch of them together. So I think I had a day off, and then the medal ceremony was the next day. So after that, because it was like the only gold medal that year, all the dignitary and sailing was in the Olympic Village. So the Olympic marina that was built and the village were all as one. So it's the only games where we were in the heart of the Olympic Games. So all the New Zealand team, the officials, the chef de missions, the IOC members, which I had no idea who any of them were, by the way, because I was living in this world of being an athlete. And then I became one of them. I'm like, who are all these people? Anyway, and then you get dragged off for lunch with the Governor General of New Zealand. I'm like, who's that person, and then dragged off to media interviews. And meanwhile, all your family, which is the windsurfing family, were all hanging out together, and they all went partying. And then when I finished all my television interviews with Holmes, and don't get me wrong, it was really cool, but I just wanted to be with my friends and celebrate. And when I came back to the village, they'd all gone, and there was no one around, and I'm like, well, that sucks.
The loneliest gold medal winner in history.
So I crawled into my wardrobe and cried.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
Did you actually?
Yes.
Oh, Barb, that's terrible.
Yeah.
Well, have you ever told that publicly before?
No.
Oh, that's the saddest ending ever. So when did you? Was it when you started doing the interviews, like with the satellite interviews back home to the Holmes show, or One News, 3 News, whatever? Is that when you realised the significance of what you'd done? Like, was it the first gold medal by a New Zealand woman in 40 years? Or?
Yes, it was. I had no idea. I had no idea of the significance of that until those interviews started. But I really didn't know the significance of it until we came home.
Yeah, just massive. So Yvette Williams had won a gold medal for the long jump 40 years earlier. She was the first New Zealand woman to win a gold Olympic medal. 40 years later, now it happens that we're winning them left, right and centre.
Yeah.
There's so many, which is bloody brilliant.
It is. And I remember Yvette came when I got home, finally got home to my mum and dad's place. She came round and congratulated me. And we compared medals. And hers was just a tiny little coin. If she had seen the medals today, she would just be blown away because they're this big. Hers was just a coin without even a ribbon, her gold medal. And we have this amazing photo, which I actually treasure, of her and I together in our blazers from our Olympic Games holding our medals.
Yeah, you became quite good friends after that.
Yeah, well, she lived just 10 minutes down the road from where I did, and she'd coached my husband's family in athletics. So it's a very small community. So, yeah, and I went to her funeral, and she was an amazing lady, beautiful, unassuming, humble woman, but a real trailblazer.
Yeah, as you are, as you are. And massive. So you were the only New Zealander to win a gold at those games. So you came back. There was like a ticker tape parade.
Ticker tape parade was insane. So we just got off the plane. We got taken in these buses. We're in our summer Barcelona skirts and blazers. It's a howling southwesterly. It's about 10 degrees with rain squalls coming across. We're like, oh my God. It was freezing. And then we got taken in buses to the bottom of Queen Street and put in these cars to go up Queen Street. And there was just people everywhere. That was mind-blowing. And all the paper people throwing the streamers. I think that's the last one that they had like that. I might be wrong, but because it was such a mess probably to clean up and the logistics of it. And then I got given, as a spokesperson, got given a cheque of $25,000 from the New Zealand Sports Foundation at the time, which I had no idea that happened either.
Oh, that would have been a significant amount of money back then.
Yeah, but half of it had to go to your sports federation.
Oh, you're joking? Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah, and I was like, really? But
that doesn't seem fair.
That didn't, yeah.
How was this for you? So you're 24 at the time?
Yeah, I was and I was young. I was a young 24. Like the 24, we didn't have internet. So you didn't have access to all this knowledge and stuff, and then having to get up and speak. I'd never done that before, I'd been a dance teacher years ago, quite a few years before. I'd never been a speech person and then ended up, having to speak a lot.
Yeah, it's a massive baptism of fire, right? Was it enjoyable though? Like
it was.
Being an overnight celebrity? Because you were a household name. Like I was. Don't think we can emphasise that point home enough. Just what a big deal this was.
Yeah,
in New
well,
Zealand
everywhere I went, people knew who I was, and it was weird in the beginning. But maybe because I was a dancer and used to being on the stage, I just put on a presence and you just smile and wave but people were so, and they still are. Like on the beach the other day, a woman came up to me and said, "Barbara, I'm so glad I bumped into you. I've been wanting to tell you for years and years and years. You are an amazing person. Thank you so much for everything that you've done." And I just went, oh, like this, And so it still happens like that now, which is really cool. That's especially now I'm removed from it and it's not so confronting. It was really, really awesome. So yeah, it was hard in the beginning, but then people are always so positive, and then I realised that I had a responsibility to be a role model and to encourage and inspire people to just go out there and go for it.
Hard in the beginning in what way? Like from a pressure perspective?
No, your privacy.
Oh, okay.
So I was crazy. And then
you've said this about half a dozen times.
Not crazy in a bad way, but
no, just crazy energy.
Yeah, crazy energy, and you get a bit maybe self-conscious, a little bit. So you have to tone yourself down and.
Oh, because you just feel like people are watching you.
Yeah, you feel like you're being watched the whole time. You're at a pub and you hang out with your mates and you're having a good time yelling and you're being obnoxious or whatever it may be, and someone yells across the pub, "Hey, I know you. You're Barbara Kendall," and everybody then turns and stares at you and you go, "Oh." So it was a little bit to get used to as a young person.
Yeah, I suppose, especially if you're just a beach girl that likes hanging out with your brother and your mates.
And I had a really amazing circle of friends that were my mates. They were all windsurfers. We're all our tribe. We just celebrated 50 years of windsurfing this year, and it got to bump in. We all came together, and there was over 400 of us from New Zealand that all windsurfed from over the decades. Centuries would be too old. And it was so nice. All these people that we'd hung out with in Maui and Hawaii when we'd been living there, and people that I'd done campaigns with. And it was just like, it's your family, And I had this amazing bunch of people they just saw me as Barbara, There was no stars in their eyes. It was just like legend in her own lunchbox, whatever. And we carried on. So it kept you really normal.
Were there cool commercial opportunities that came from it, or was that not really a thing then?
No, not really a thing. It was still good for me. Like speaking, I was like, wow, I can earn that much from a speak. I'm in. Count me in. And
you get over your nerves pretty quickly, when you realise how much those corporate dinners pay.
Yeah, and then I was like, hang on a minute, I could probably make a little bit of money, which will help me if I decide to keep windsurfing, because after every Olympics, you're like, man, that's it, I'm retiring. I want a normal life. And then I was like, oh, I could earn a bit of money and I could go back onto the professional circuit again. My husband could come with me because I got married and be my caddy, which would be incredible. And it's such an amazing lifestyle, traveling from beach to beach, all these amazing beaches around the world and competing. And we competed in swimming pools and in France, with fans and do it with my best friend. That'd be pretty cool. And I spoke at an event for Kmart actually, and afterwards they said, we'd like to sponsor you. And I'm like, really? That would be awesome. So yeah, that was my first real sponsor where I paid good money, and then I got a couple of television ads on a few things, and I was able to go and compete with a little bit of budget, and that was amazing.
Oh, it must have just made life so much more comfortable.
It was like, well, I've got to do this again.
Yeah, I got a taste of it. What were the TV ads? I bet they're still on YouTube or somewhere.
I did this one I did one for a toothpaste. I did one for that actually most of that. Can't even remember. One I did after I'd had kids. That's when I became more marketable. But before kids, it was just like there wasn't a big market for women's sport.
And then the 96 games in Atlanta, you were the flag bearer, which is a huge honour. When do you find out about that? How long before the games?
So you'd get asked by the chef de mission, who was Dave Curry, Dr. Dave Curry at the time, and he asked me, and I went, oh yeah, that sounds like I'm a yes person. If there's an opportunity that presents itself, you say yes, and then you worry about how you're going to do it later. And it was something that's been passed on from both my nan and my nanas. My nana said to me, Barbara, just say yes, and see where it goes, see where you go, see what happens. And so I said yes. It happens about 2 days before the team gathering, and then they announce it, and then you go up there, you go up and you get back then they didn't have the cloak and things, and they just announce your name and you go, and then the flag, and then they take photos, and then you have to make a speech. And then I'm like, wow, these are all my peers. I'm like leading my peers and people that are just, who you respect very well. Like, this is actually a little bit of a responsibility in a way as well. So it put a bit of pressure on. Yeah,
I wondered that. So you were 4 years earlier you'd won the gold medal. You're breaking this 40-year drought for New Zealand. Then you're the flag bearer. It's like really underlining your name, isn't it? Like the weight of that must have felt like the weight of the nation on your shoulders.
It did, and I had no way to express that. Like if you saw a psychologist back then, there was something wrong with you, and there was nothing wrong with me, but there was no acknowledgement of that. And so I could feel myself getting tighter and tighter and tighter, being the defending champion, second in the world champs leading up into it, game on, even though we were on a different type of board and they'd opened it up to pumping. So the first Olympic Games, our class, the classes changed and evolved. And so it was a different skill set, much, much more athletic, where you're fanning the sail as fast as you can. So it's more like being on a rowing machine. We became real athletes. And so that experience for me was that it was frustrating because physiologically, if you don't breathe properly or you're under stress, you breathe too high up into your shoulders and your neck. And then that blocks the flow and the energy down to your arms, which is on a meridian that goes across your heart and lungs. It goes right across your chest. So if you're stressed or not breathing properly, it can affect your arm. And I would have terrible arm pump up. And it wasn't carpal tunnel. It was an energy and it was a postural thing. And that really inhibited my performance in Atlanta, which was a bummer. But the Hong Kong girl, she'd been my training partner in Barcelona, and we'd been training a lot leading up into 96 because her coach was a really good friend of Bruce's. He was a Dutch guy. And so we'd become good friends. And she'd just gone from not being an athlete at all to this superhuman. They'd started, this is when the whole sports science started, where we were being lactate tested, VO2 tested, and Hong Kong got into earlier than what we had it here in New Zealand. And so she was just a machine and on fire. And so I was really happy in the end just to win the silver.
Or as I said before, you see you on the podium, and it's no different to 4 years earlier when you got the gold.
Yeah, because
you
you realise when you're in it, you're like, oh shit, I've got the silver, and then you take a day to reflect, and you go, wow, I actually won silver.
I got the silver.
With these limitations,
Yeah.
with not being able to pump properly. It's like having one arm again. So, yeah, it was really interesting. And, yeah, and then there was a whole lot of interesting things that happened after that.
Interesting things. And
well, it was because the day the Hong Kong girl won the gold and she didn't have to win the last race. And because someone else in the New Zealand team was about to win a medal up in Atlanta, I can't remember exactly who it was, all the New Zealand press disappeared because Savannah was an hour's flight from Atlanta. So they all went back up to Atlanta. So when I won my silver medal, there was no New Zealand press and there was no photos of me winning a medal.
how was that? Was that
There is none. You Google it and you can't find any photos. And so what happened when they say, "Oh, Barbara, have you got a photo with your medal?" I went, "No, I haven't." So we had photographers come around to my home when I got home, and I dressed up in my tracksuit and took some photos then.
Were you pissed about that?
I was like, well, I didn't know that until later. And I'm like, and then another thing, what had happened is the rest of the sailing team, because we'd had so much success in Barcelona, and we didn't have as much success in Atlanta. When I came back to the pontoon, there was no celebration. I said, someone said, there's a bottle of champagne for you in the fridge, but we're not going to celebrate now because everyone else has to still compete. I'm like, oh, okay. And then we went back to the hotel room and that was it.
You went to your wardrobe and cried again.
Well, no, because I was still surrounded. I had quite a few just friends in Atlanta and were like, oh, this is still really cool. And, you don't think about those things until later, because you just think, you sort of like, because I'm very in the moment girl and I don't reflect. I'm just like, oh, this is okay. This is interesting. And just away I went because I'm like, well, it is what it is. And away you go and let it go. And it's not until you look back and you go, that wasn't right because I don't feel that should have happened to a silver medalist. I need to say something about that. And so that's when I found out that New Zealand had an athletes commission, and I went, actually, I want to hear my voice heard because I don't want to have other people feel like they've lost because they've won a silver medal.
Good for you. Where did that come from? That sort of what's the word I'm looking for? That sort of you're not going to just going to be a good girl and sit in the corner.
That probably came from being who I was when I was born because my mum wanted to have 4 kids and have me.
No, because
so I spoke up.
You know what I mean? That'd be the easiest thing, just to go, I won't make a big deal about this, whatever.
Well, that's what women have done for a really long time.
Yeah.
And I was brought up to speak up. And I always felt like I was a boy because I grew up around, I'd mostly been hanging around the guys racing all the time. There'd been no other girls. And so I felt like one of the lads. So it never really occurred to me that on a lot of levels that things weren't appropriate or girls were being, you should be back in the kitchen, as I was told later on. But yeah, I was like, actually, male or female, this is something you shouldn't be made to feel after you won a medal. I
feel like it'd be an easier conversation to have now, but 28 years ago or whatever it is, that would be rocking the boat. Like that Barbara Kendall, she's a troublemaker.
Yeah, exactly. And still sort of I get that about, Barbara has very strong opinions. And I'm going, well, actually, usually my opinions are attached to something that's happened that says, well, maybe this isn't right. How can we do this better?
And then 4 years after that, it's the Sydney Games where you win a bronze. Which no,
I retired after at 96 because we talk about this transition thing. When athletes retire, after you've done the Olympics, you go, that's it, I'm done. I'm not going to windsurf anymore. I'm going to get myself a real job. And then I went and coached.
Did you for how long?
6 months.
That's the shortest retirement ever. Yeah. And then what? Then you missed it?
Well, then I missed it, and I found I was a better training partner than a coach. And I was coaching the youth team, and so I went to the Youth Worlds with the youth team, and one of the young boys there got a 4th, and I went, actually, I'm quite a good coach and training partner, and I'm going quite fast. Perhaps I should try for Sydney because it's so close. And this is when the government started giving PEGS grants, so performance enhancing grants. So we actually, if we were top 10 in the world, you could get $10,000. That was big. I think it might have even been more back then. And I was like, wow, for the first time, instead of having to have my own sponsors, we're getting supported by the government to be a professional athlete in a way. And coaches were starting to get paid as well, which was amazing because coaches were never paid until Sydney. So Sydney was like the first games where there was funding.
And so you were still quite young, eh? Early 30s?
Yeah, I was
for
early
Sydney?
30s, yeah. I was 32.
Okay. So you get a bronze for that. Which completes the whole set, which is amazing. Gold, silver and bronze in that order as well.
That's correct.
Was that was it disappointing or was it gratifying?
No, it was. I was really happy with the bronze because Murphy's Law happened in that one where I won back-to-back world championships leading up into that Olympic Games, which no one had ever done before. So, because sailing's random, it's not like a distance that you run or a shot put that you throw or a kayak race in a straight line. It's like you never know, and you can't control the weather. You don't know where you're going to. It's random. And so with Sydney, the Italian girl that beat me, she was been my arch rival for many Olympic Games and was very similar to me in the way that she sailed. And it was her turn, she'd got a silver. She got the bronze in Atlanta, and she went on to do 6 Olympic Games actually. And then a German girl who was super, super light just had this amazing lucky star, and she was really fast, and we had the same wind every single day, and she'd never ever beaten me in a regatta, and I think she'd only ever beaten me in one race. She ended up winning the silver, and I was like, nothing I can do about that. So I was really happy to have got the bronze in that regatta.
Yeah. Oh, congratulations. And then 2 more Olympic campaigns, which took it to 5, which is remarkable, eh? That's some serious longevity.
Yeah, serious. So after Sydney, I retired.
Again.
Yeah, and then
You're the worst at retiring,
yeah,
by the way.
I was. And then I was like, all of a sudden, the maternal clock was like, I want to have kids, and it was just, I'd never even knew babies existed until then. Really weird. I didn't even know that there was a whole genre of shopping for babies back, and anyway, had my first daughter who was just the most beautiful, amazing young woman, and when she got put into my arms, I'm like, oh shit, what do I do now? I don't know how to be a mum. So I said to her, you're going to have to teach me how to be a mum because I have no idea. We're in this together. And she's been like that ever since and still is. Like we're best friends in a way because I'm like, I have no idea how to be your mother. Let's do this together. And then and even now as a young adult, I'm like, how do I do it? How do you want me to do it? How do you want me to help you? The whole way through it. Just amazing, amazing woman.
Must have been difficult for the first 18 months or so when communication's a little bit...
Yeah, but she was a really good baby.
Right.
She was actually a really good baby. And then about 13 months into it, I was like, I really want to go sailing. And then knew the World Champs was coming up in Thailand, never been to Thailand, wanted to go somewhere warm. One of the young guys, I said to him, John Paul Tobin, find me some fast equipment because it's one design. I just want to come and do the World Champs for fun. I had no funding because they took away all my funding after having a kid. There was nothing left. So I paid for it myself and for my husband and all of us to go.
Why? Not because you had a kid?
Yeah, because that was it. Well, they didn't think that I'd be able to come back. And I wasn't in the system because I'd retired. I hadn't really officially retired. I just hadn't said, well, I'm going to have a kid. And then
they didn't say that's the reason why they did that?
No,
but you just knew.
It was unspoken,
yeah, okay.
Sort of. And then when I won the World Champs, it was just like, oh no, now we're going to have to fund her again because that qualified me for Athens.
Here she is, the squeaky wheel again. Let's give
yeah,
her some more
the squeaky
oil.
wheel, exactly. But they were actually, Yachting New Zealand was pretty good because I said, well, I can't leave her at home because my husband's a coach. We have to travel around together. And the funding got better from the government. I got good sponsors because at the end I said, well, I can't continue unless I get sponsors. And I was really lucky. There's a whole genre of carry baby milk and appliances, and I was able to get good sponsorship that enabled us, all 3 of us, to go around, compete. Because you're away 5 months of the year, 6 months of the year to do these campaigns properly. And we couldn't sleep in the car anymore, because we had a kid. So
your logistics, there's a lot to think about.
Yeah, and then Athens was that was probably my most disappointing games in a way with results wise.
So it was 2004.
Yeah.
And then your last Olympics, Beijing in 2008, where you finished 6th as a 41-year-old mum of 2.
Yeah.
Sixth place, it's not on the podium, but you look back now, 41 years old, mum of 2, you bloody proud of that?
Oh, really proud. And particularly I'd once got second in the 2 World Championships leading up into that. So I was right there. but I was tired, and just the fight of everything. I was like, okay, I'm really having to really dig deep to motivate yourself, to get yourself to the gym, to sail the equipment. And the equipment was a new set. That's one of the reasons I went back, is because it was new equipment, faster. And I'm like, this looks like fun. I quite like to do this. My husband was an incredible training partner. He was like the fastest girl on the water. So I had the best in the windy. He was terrible when it was light. He was such a good training partner. And China was light, a little bit light too. But I felt like my back was against the wall a little bit leading up into it. I was fighting, for funding, fighting for my place in the team. Just everything was just a little bit more of a fight.
Felt like a battle. Yeah. And then so 2 years after that, in 2010, you retire. You're at peace with the decision?
I was well ready.
Well, this was the 8th time you'd retired.
Yeah. When I remember in the second to last race, I got around the top mark, and I looked behind me, and there was only one girl behind me, and I went, I don't even know how that happened. And then I just started laughing, going, I've done this enough. I've spent, 25 years of my life sailing really fast around buoys to prove that I'm really good at it. And I don't really feel like I need to do this anymore. It was just like this, this is it. This is probably close to the last race I'll ever do.
So there was no post sporting career come down or anything?
No, nothing.
That's great, isn't it?
Oh, no, I charged into the next thing.
Yeah. Which was what, straight into admin, coaching?
No, I was by that time I'd become an International Olympic Committee member. So speaking up as an athlete, I got into the Athletes Commission. Every year, every Olympic Games, there is a vote of athletes that sit on the International Olympic Committee as the athlete's voice. And I put my name up for Sydney, but really no idea what it was for. But small sport, no one was being voted. Small country, no one in New Zealand knew what it was. Didn't get enough votes. But in 2005, Susie O'Neill, who'd got voted on, she didn't want to finish her term because she was going to have kids. And so I was the next highest vote in Sydney. And I got this phone call, and I remember it really clearly, from Tay Wilson, who was our IOC member at the time. He said, Barbara, would you like to become an IOC member? And I went, sure, yeah, okay. No idea what it was for or how I'd even got this phone call.
It's like we were saying before, just say yes.
And he said, well, you need to come to Singapore and you'll get signed in as an IOC member. And I was 5 months pregnant at the time with Amy, and I said, well, I'm about to have a baby on that day. And he says, oh, well, you come afterwards. So afterwards Amy was born, I went to my first meeting as an International Olympic Committee Athletes Commission member. No idea what I was in for. But they gave me a first class ticket, and I went, this is pretty swanky. And then I'm like, I had to take my baby with me because I was breastfeeding, in first class with a baby, looking at all these businessmen going, how do I keep this baby quiet? Because she was a fussy baby. And got to the airport, and they picked me up in this limousine with my name on the sign, Miss Barbara Kendall, VIP. And I'm like, this is pretty amazing. In a Mercedes. And then got to the Palace Hotel in Lausanne in Switzerland, where the IOC is headquartered, and everything was gold, and it was just 5-star amazingness. It was just like, wow, all my Christmases had come at once. Then I was like, cool, I'm going to be hanging out with, these leader athletes like Sergei Bubka, Frankie Fredericks, Alexander Popov, all these big names. And I'm like, cool. So I rock up downstairs the next morning after a restful night, baby brain, breastfeeding, organised a babysitter in a T-shirt and jeans, and everybody is in suits and ties. And I don't want to go back to the room because then the baby will squawk. And I'm like, okay, I've got my Kia ora T-shirt on, my flared jeans and boots. No one had told me that there was dress code. Like, I slipped through the cracks and turn up at this meeting, and we're all sitting around a table like this with microphones, and you have to press the microphone to speak because it's all translated into 6 different languages because you've got all the, United Nations around the table. And I just sat there just going, oh my God. And then having to go off to the bathrooms to pump milk because my boobs are exploding with milk because she's only 3 months old, and it was a nightmare. And then you get home, and then we have a president's dinner, and I'm going, I'm not paying $40 an hour for a babysitter anymore because you're a volunteer. I'm going to bring my baby to the meeting with the president. And I did. I brought her in the pushchair, rocked her up, and she sat beside me in the pushchair because she was asleep. And I'm like, And no one did that in there. I didn't know this at the time because I'm like, what else am I going to do? I have to bring my baby along with me. And then at the end of it, I said, you know what? This sucks being a mother and a woman in leadership as a young mother. There's no support. You know, babies are to be seen, not heard, but what am I meant to be doing? I don't have a nanny. I'm not rich enough to afford a nanny to fly with me, like a lot of the other members. And at the time, there were only 15 women out of 130 membership on the IOC. And so I spoke up. And now look at it. It's amazing.
Yeah, and also part of that for you, like having gone from being an athlete and a very, very successful Olympic athlete to being on the other side, on the admin side, were you like, what the fuck? Like we're hustling with sponsorship, we're hustling with funding, we're sleeping on cardboard beds, and you guys are, did you?
I was like...
The irony of it wasn't lost on you?
No, oh God, no. I was like, oh my God, can I trade that airfare in? I'll fly economy class and then I'll be able to use that money to help other athletes or to help something, you know? But then I realised that actually I needed to sleep because I was by the time I finished my term, I was travelling every month for a week to Europe or somewhere else to fly, and just I needed to lie flat because when you're on an aeroplane, that's when you got to sleep. So when you get there, you could be sharp and on it, and make good decisions.
What's involved with being one of those members, like one of those 130 members of the IOC?
So you get put on different commissions, and you come up with recommendations where you advise the IOC Executive Board on how they're going to spend their $3.25 million a day in sport.
Wow.
So it was I had no idea how big the role was. You know, I had no idea that, you got to vote where the Olympic Games were going to happen next. You got to vote who's on the Executive Board. You get to help mould what sports are going to be on the program for the Olympic Games. The amount of money that is floating around in federations and how it's allocated to National Olympic Committees, scholarships, the environment, women in sport, all these things. I had no idea. And it took me 4 years to really understand how I was going to make a difference. And there's a lot of politicking around, a lot of brown-nosing where people come up to you and talk to you and say, we'd really like your vote and blah, 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 and there's just this whole world of all the deals made in the hallways of the movement. Yeah,
and I'd get the feeling you've got a real good sort of BS detector.
Yeah, very. Yeah, and I don't do it very well at all. That's why I wouldn't make a very good politician because I was just like, I'm straight talker, and New Zealanders are really well respected in the world of politics because we have incredible integrity. Coming from New Zealand, like there's no bribery and corruption, and I'll pat your back if you pat my back. It's really like actually who is the best person for the job, whether you're male or female. That's where I came from, and very transparent with everything that you do.
Oh yeah, just a thought. So as someone that's been a very successful athlete and has been on the admin side of the Olympics, what are your thoughts on ray gun?
That was a really interesting one, that one. She qualified underneath the rules. And I think because dance sport was very new to the Olympic program, she kind of slipped through the cracks because Oceania, we're only 17 National Olympic Committees, whereas in Africa you've got 55. So it's easier to qualify a continental spot, which is under Olympic solidarity to ensure all the continents are represented in each sport. So she found a gap, qualified, rightfully so, and then got to go. But there should be, it's just like Eddie the Eagle. Or the eel in the swimming pool.
Yeah,
do you remember
right.
that?
I do. Nigerian guy, African guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she was like that kind of entry in a way that we've got to have someone from the continent, and away she goes. So she qualified. She was within the rules, and she did what she thought was going to be creative, for it. So. And that obviously showed a gap, so it wouldn't happen again. But
loophole plugged.
But breakdancing's not in dance sports, not in the next games.
Let's talk. I've got a card here called Bits and Pieces.
Okay.
Some other bits and pieces to the incredible Barbara Kendall story. So, what was the surfboard accident in 2019? Did you end up with a bunch of stitches on your?
Yeah, that was me recreational surfing.
Right.
Outside of the barrier, and it was a really big day, and we were on boats. Because there's not a lot out there. And I came off the back of a wave, and you sort of do the Superman thing at the back of the wave if you've had a really good wave. But it was very, very windy offshore, and the board got picked up. And as I popped up, bad timing, the board smashed me in the face, right. And I remember just going, ow, that hurt, and put my hand up to my face, and my hands went inside my cheek, and I went, oh shit, that's not good. And there was blood all over my hand. I went, okay, I think I better go back to the boat because it's quite sharky out there. And I was paddling, and I was really tired because at the end of a hard week of surfing, and so every breath I took, I was like, and every time I blew out, blood would go onto the board, and I'm like, this ain't good.
Is that the scar?
Yeah, just here.
Jesus. Jeez, you're a savage, aren't you?
Well,
so you were fit like 52, 53
I know,
at the time?
and I was like, oh no, I'm going to have to probably get I couldn't think about what it was going to look like, because I was like, I might have to get plastic surgery. You know, this is quite gnarly. And when I went into the doctor at the barrier, I walked in, he goes, oh, you're not the most famous person I've stitched up. He'd been an All Blacks doctor, and stitching up the All Blacks, faces. And he says, you won't need plastic surgery, and you'll probably be able to surf tomorrow. And I went, oh, that's a good prognosis. So he stitched up my face, went back to the boat that night, quite sore, woke up in the morning, and my face was like this, and I had this huge, big, because the face had swollen, everything was spread out, this huge, big black caterpillar on my face, and I burst into tears. That was another teary moment.
Yeah, wow, that's that's hilarious. That's pretty great. Jessie, you're not aging gracefully, are you? And
no, but they say,
like
scars, grey hairs and wrinkles are a good sign that you've lived.
Oh, and I think you being out there, tearing it up in your 50s, that's goals.
Yeah. Well, I hope you set like a role model for like, well, if Barbara can do it, I can do it. That's what I'd like to imagine has happened.
Now, you've got a royal honour. What's your royal honour? What you've got a...
So I got a member of the British Empire after I won the gold medal, services to windsurfing, and then I got a companion of the New Zealand Order of Merit for leadership in sport.
Why aren't you a dame?
Very good question. Don't know. The thing is, I was maybe before my time. And
because Yvette
Williams had got it. They actually told her just before she died, so that was really sad because she was a trailblazer. And I don't know. Who knows how all those things work? It's just one of those things that.
Does it bother you?
Sometimes it does. I'm like, oh, that's a bit strange because I feel like I've done a lot. I mean, I've dedicated my life since I was 16 to sport, and particularly the last. So I started in 2005, so 19 years pretty much as a volunteer, because I got those, being an IOC member, it's a real privilege, but that's a responsibility, and it's a voluntary role, and that I had to sacrifice a lot of my maybe financial, starting up a business or working for a big salary, after I'd retired. Yeah. I just carried on with the IOC and survived just like an athlete. So yeah. Sometimes it is.
I was surprised doing this research that you weren't a dame.
I know, it's been embarrassing because a lot of people say, oh, Dame Barbara Kendall, and they introduce you and go, well, actually, I'm not.
Don't correct them. Don't correct them in future. Let's manifest
No, I go, I'm one below.
Well, can they over...
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't.
yeah. You're not overly bothered about it.
It's not my... Because it's just an award, it's just a thing. It's a thing that you put. But I think if you ask me what I'm most proud of, I'd be most proud of my daughters and who they are. Because that to me is when you've been, they talk about leadership in women, and, once you're a mum, it's very hard to be away from your kids because you're attached to them and you want to be there. I miss, my daughter's first day of school because I was travelling and those types of things. And then you enter menopause and you run out of energy to take on women's leadership roles. And so my husband has been most incredible mother to my girls. He's been the stay-at-home dad who's made their school lunches, took them to school, took them to dancing, took them to music lessons, took them to netball, took them to water polo, and they are incredible girls.
What's been the key to a successful partnership, a successful marriage? Communication.
Lots and lots and lots of communication. And my husband Shane's really allowed me to be who I am. and hasn't been intimidated by a strong, opinionated woman. He just loves it, and comes along for the ride, and away we go.
So do I. I find it inspiring.
Yeah. And so we've been best friends since I was 19, and we
Is that when you met?
Yeah, we met, and he just allowed me to be me, and just like today, for instance, and we were foiling in the surf, and I'm like, oh no, I have to get in because time, and he says, leave your equipment on the beach, I'll de-rig it and bring it home, you go home, and away you go. So yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just
that's so special.
Awesome.
That's really cool.
He's a gold. He's the gold.
And you guys had a massive house fire, right? Like 2010.
Yeah. So
what happened? Your whole house burned down?
No. We were we got 4 acres in the bush, and someone let a firework off at the bottom of our section on a road that had just been formed, and strapped a few fireworks together, lit off, put it on the ground, probably lit it. Caught the grass on fire because it was really dry at the time, and there was a howling southwesterly, and it just fanned up the up our section because we had a lot of toy and stuff. And I was driving home from swimming lessons with the kids, and I went, oh, there's a fire truck going up our road. Oh, there's 9 fire trucks up our road. Oh, shoot, that smoke is coming from our house. Ran into the house, and they were going, and the guy says, you got 10 minutes to grab what you want. So that's an interesting question. You've got 10 minutes in your house to grab things that you would like, because the rest of it probably won't make it.
Yeah, because that's it's a question people ask for fun. I like a dinner party sort of question. What do you grab?
Well, lucky I had my medals in the car because I'd just been speaking at a school. After that, I bought a fireproof safe, and I live in there because I'm like, well, we can't get another one. And I just bought an iPad. And I got that and I went, oh, that'll do.
Yeah, so I suppose back in the day you'd grab like old physical photo albums, but everything's on the cloud now.
Yeah, well, but mine aren't. I haven't transferred them.
Okay, so
but
just
my
on
latest
the device.
ones are. But I have all these albums that I probably at some stage should get digitised.
Was it just a moment that you realised that stuff is just stuff?
Yeah, very, very much like that. Family calls me the chucker-outerer. Because I'm getting rid of stuff all the time to minimise. That's why I love going overseas. You have one bag.
Yeah.
I don't need stuff.
And then Dancing with the Stars, 2009. I know you like saying yes to things, but this was the no-brainer, right? Like this is the reality show you were born to do.
Yeah, well, it was. When I'd seen it, I'd thought, oh, God, I'd love to learn how to ballroom dance. And putting it in perspective, so I was 42 at the time, and I hadn't danced in a formal way since I was 18. So that's a lifetime. And so when I started dancing ballroom, and I'd never done it, I felt like a beginner. I was like, oh my God, somebody else, and getting into sync and learning steps and memorising them and getting spatial awareness and all that sort of stuff. I had the rhythm, no problem at all with rhythm, but I was just used to shaking it loose, So it was super fun, and I picked it up very, very quickly. But the reality is you only have 3 days to master something, and I like to master it so I could then enjoy it. You never had a chance to master anything. You were just sort of like in this daze of like being swung around the floor and hoping that you remember your steps.
Who else was in that season with you?
We had Tamati Coffee. He ended up winning. We had all black guy, surfer. God, I've forgotten his name.
Maz Quinn?
No. Bald hair, not Norm Hermit, but it was a really fun guy. He commentates sometimes. He was on TV with April Iramia for a while.
Josh Confield. I recorded a podcast with him a few days ago.
Yeah, Josh.
Oh, he's great.
God,
Lovely
I can't believe
guy.
it took me that long to remember. We had reality television programs. The group of people that you do it with become your family because you share an incredible experience. And for me, the exciting part was, when you got to say, okay, what are we going to dance today? And then learning the dance, and then turning up to the dress rehearsal, getting these frou-frou costumes, because I'd never been girly girl, to wear all these things, sexy costumes. I'm like, really? But then I didn't like the competition side of it, because it was just like, you're being judged on something you'd never done, told to ooze, and I'm going, I can't ooze. My brain's going,
Ooze? What does that even mean?
I don't know, look sexy, and I'm like, huh? But it was super fun. It was such a fun journey.
Should you have won it?
That was irrelevant. That was irrelevant. We, raising $125,000 for the Upside Downs Trust, and I still do work for them now. We just raised $85,000 a few weekends ago with a fundraiser with them. And meeting that group of people was the gem. The judges, it was really nice to win the final night and get perfect 10s and everything, like perfect scorecard in every single dance. That was the one. It wasn't about who was going to get the silver ball.
Yeah. I mean, what are you going to do with the glitter ball trophy anyway?
Really?
You got a safe full of Olympic medals.
There was, everybody was a winner that went on that show.
Yeah. Oh, nice. And so Tamati Coffee won that one. Coincidentally, he's just been on
Celebrity Treasure Island.
Celebrity Treasure Island, which you were also on a few years ago.
Yeah, so I went in 2019.
Yeah. Now you have to forgive me. I didn't see the season, but I did some reading up about it. Were you the villain?
Apparently.
Yeah.
Well, I was probably very opinionated.
Right.
And so I fell into captaincy from day one. And so you sort of set a tone and a manakitana of what you want, how you want to survive this weird situation. And luckily we had an incredible team of us that had been in a competitive environment and were really chilled out. So we had Moses Mackay, who's quite competitive, even though he's an opera singer. We had Gary Freeman. We had boxer.
Oh, Shane Cameron.
Yes. And so and then Lana, who was a runner, so she was sort of athletic as well. And so we had this. We were really chilled, and one of the competitors wanted us to get into strategy, and I'm like, when you get there, you just go hard. You don't need to strategize about who you're going to try and save. Let's just go out there and do what we have to do. It was a really funny time.
Who did you have beef with? It was
Maddie. Maddie got all sensitive.
That's right. There's the quote from that season. I don't need to prove myself to Barbara Kendall.
Yeah.
What was what's the backstory with that?
Oh, the backstory was, I wanted to keep. I said strong guys, meaning physically strong guys, because there was a lot of lifting things and holding things and physical challenges, and so I didn't want to get rid of Moses and Shane because they were like strong. And it was coming down to and that's what I was meaning. But it got, like anything on those reality television programs, they take everything out of context. And so when I said Matty, he said, well, the first thing is I don't want to get rid of the strong competitors. And he instantly went, oh, I'm not strong. But it was physical, but he is strong. He was a really fast runner. He was super fit. He was a really good swimmer. But when it went into competition, sometimes his brain, like he had one job on one thing to undo a tap and he couldn't find the tap, but it was right there. So when people go into competition, your brains go into fear mode and then you can't think straight. But with athletes, because we're in fear mode the whole time, you learn how to just sink into it.
Lean into the pressure
and go. And so he took it really, really personally. And yeah. So that was quite funny. But no one has to prove themselves to anybody. No. You've proven, it's like...
It's a great quote, though.
It is. It's like Sir Edmund Hillary. It's not the mountain that you conquer, it's yourself. And that's what those reality programs done. It's not everyone else around you. It's you, because it's just a reflection of you, what you're experiencing.
Yeah. I messaged Eric Murray this morning.
Oh, yeah?
Because he was on the same season. So I said, you got any Barbara Kendall stories? He said he was on a different team, so he didn't have much to do with you.
No.
But he said he thinks she hated it. She was sick all the time.
Yeah, well, I had no food. And I ate a rancid coconut, which gave me diarrhea. And I couldn't get rid of it because I had no food to soak up the stomach. They kept giving me anti-diarrhea pills, but we needed food. And then when we finally did win food, there was Tim Tams. So that's not very good for someone that's had diarrhea for a week. No, I lost 5 kilos in 2 weeks. So, and then what happened is I lost the cognition to my brain, because your brain is the first thing that goes. Physically, I was good, but your brain went, and we played a memory game, and I went. I have a usually good memory, and went, oh, I can't remember anything, and went, okay, this is not good. It's time for me to go.
Mm. And you, you love saying yes to things, but if you got asked to go on that again,
no. If we got food, like you knew you were going to get food, not Tim Tams, and actually the first one we ran, they gave us a couch and a bottle of wine, and I'm going, can you give us some crackers with the wine?
what are we going to do with this?
We hadn't eaten for a week,
Yeah.
we'd had rice. And so, it was just one of those things. I'm like, but what's really good now is that I spoke up about it and I said, that's not safe. And nowadays, you get hungry, but you don't get hungry like we were. They have a lot more food in every win, which is really good to see.
And I hear your daughters were really proud. Like they'd have viewing parties every week. It was on, and
yeah, well, they were that age where they understood what was going on. So we'd had friends come around and we'd watch it and we'd laugh and laugh and laugh at it. It's a bit uncomfortable because you don't know how they're going to portray you in these games. And your reputation is sort of everything. I wasn't there to be entertainment. I was there to sort of have a bit of fun and meet people and try and win some money. Yeah.
Yeah, were you sort of scarred by the experience? Or?
A little bit.
Were you actually?
Yeah, a little bit in the end because it was just because I was disappointed in a way that I'd got so run down from having not enough food. And then, the reaction of Matty to he said it in good humour, but he meant it. Obviously when I'd said we want strong players, he'd taken it completely personally. And so he sort of had a bit of a grudge.
Yeah. Ooh, God, is there still long-standing beef with you two?
No, not at all. I mean, he does what he does, I do what I do, and
And he doesn't need to prove himself to you, damn it.
And then when he said, "Take that, Barbara Kendall," when he won it, I'm just like, really?
Oh, did he?
Yes.
Did he? So you'd been gone for weeks and weeks, or?
Yeah, and then I had the Women's Weekly ring me up and said, "Would you and Matty like to get destroyed?" And I said, "Oh, for goodness sake, would you find something that's much more newsworthy than that?" It was just like, really? Yeah. Anyway.
Oh God.
I know. But that's the world we live in. And that's the world that I try and not live in, because it's like, actually, I'd rather I don't do drama. Don't do drama at all.
When you, this sounds like a morbid question, but it's actually not. I had this guy on the podcast called Dougal Allen, who's actually in Barcelona at the moment with Team New Zealand.
Okay.
And he's like a coast-to-coast multi-sport legend. And he did one of those overnight adventure races, and Richie McCall was one of his teammates. And in the dark of the night when they were climbing up this hill, Richie played a game with all his teammates, and he said, what 3 words would you like to be bounced around the room at your funeral? So what would they be for you?
Well, mine would definitely be something around trailblazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Really paving the way, because that's why we're here, is that you make a path for the others to come through, and it's easier. And they're more wise from the wisdom. They still have to make their own mistakes, but there's a wisdom there that makes it easier for them to reach self-actualization, or whatever it may be, nirvana, or whatever, when you get into Buddhism. The second thing is something in and around positivity and happiness, joyful, laugh, good energy, good vibe, good verve. And then it'd be around loyalty. Something around very loyal. I've always been very, very loyal. Yeah.
They're great words. They are.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I wouldn't, like, people say, "Oh, you'll be remembered that you were competitive." I'm like, but I wasn't competitive against people. I was just competitive around, how far can I take this?
No, I get the feeling you're still like that now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's trailblazing, just trying your best at everything you do, because 100%ism has always been, and that's what I've really tried to drill into my girls, when you do something, give it everything that you've got, because you don't know how good you're going to get if you don't, and just push the boundaries and see where you can go with whatever you do.
I love that. That's a great message. Are you proud of yourself?
Oh, yeah. I really like who I am, really. But, when it sounds like I've had this most just incredible life, but the real character comes from when you've had to go deep, from things that don't go so well. You have to go really deep and go, right, how do I pull myself out of this one, and then work out how to do it quick.
Yeah,
so that
adversity.
Resilience. So dealing with adversity and learning resilience is crucial as a human.
What's been the biggest adversities for you?
Well, I reckon, that the injury on my wrist, that was nothing compared to, the last. It's been quite tough over the last 4 years with COVID and parents getting older, health issues, in and around the family. My daughter got really sick when she was overseas, and she was in America doing a water polo scholarship. Those really stressful stuff. So doing an Olympic campaign is easy. When you start to have to deal with emotional stuff and other life things that happen on your journey, and a lot of mine has been, had this beautiful pathway, and a lot of it has been plopped into the last 4 years. It's tough. It's been tough.
Yeah, I'm in the same position as you in that both my parents are still alive and well, but they're not getting any younger.
No.
So, yeah, you and I both, we're going to have shit to deal with over the next 20 years.
But that's what life is meant to be.
Yeah.
It's meant to be like, the good and the bad, they're all good. Because we're just humans, and you're just having all these experiences as a human, and you have these amazing experiences. I've had like huge, amazing experiences. I just go, I can't believe this. It's very surreal. I always go into a very third person when I have these experiences because I never buy into the ego. Never, try not to. I sometimes do, but very go, wow, look at that happening to me. This is really freaky, like having dinner with a Sheikh of Kuwait in Monaco, or christening a cruise ship, the Pacific Pearl, and being the bottle smasher, and having a giraffe named after you in the zoo, and stuff like that, weird shit, random stuff.
It's so awesome.
And or going to being a vice president of surfing and going on a jet ski and being at the mouth of Chopu where it's spitting out as it's barreling, and a surfer pops out and you're right there looking at this going, I can't believe this is my life. And then you have these other moments in life which are really emotionally traumatic, and then dealing with the fact that you've got no money in the bank and you're having to pay rates at the age of 57. You're just like, what the hell? How did I get here? Stuff like that, because it's choices that you've had to make and coming through. So it's colourful, and you just deal with it.
Yeah. And it is frustrating to hear that you be at the absolute peak in the world in your chosen sport for so many years and not have sort of financial security at the end of it. That's disappointing.
Well, it isn't. Yes and no. You can be asset rich and cash poor,
yes.
And that's where we've got to. We're asset rich, so we own our own house. Don't get me wrong, we've done this amazing thing, but it's just been the last few years have been really, really tough. Just as you sort of transition and into the next thing, and so we could sell, but then that's sort of like the next stage. So it's just sort of managing managing life in the different ages and stages that you go through.
Adulting, eh?
That's why I'm crazy. I like being a kid because you don't have responsibility. You don't have to grow up and pay all those things.
Yeah.
I just want to be a child again.
Yeah, but you find every sort of chapter or season of life comes with its own sort of unexpected challenges. And
what I am enjoying now is slowing down a little bit, and I'm really good at sitting on the couch now and watching television.
I don't know. I'm calling bullshit on that.
No, I am.
You strike me as a lady that is going to continue to live life at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, well, I think that's how you do it, and then when it's time to go, you go real fast. That's what I'd like. Just, I wouldn't wish, not trying to send it out there, but
not manifesting.
I won't be a very good patient. You know what I mean?
An impatient patient.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Dame Barbara Kendall, we're manifesting, eh? Touch wood.
No, I don't really. What would that do?
Well, I don't know. Well, it's deserved.
Yeah, but it's like
validation. Would it mean anything? Would it change you? No, but
yeah. Anyway,
like if I was you, it would irk me if there was someone that in my mind, I'm not going to name any names, but got a knighthood ahead of me when I thought I deserved it more. But anyway,
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's all different. I'm.
It is what it is.
Ages and stages and different phases in cultural awareness and all that sort of stuff. So there's different reasons.
Well, title or no title, you are a Kiwi legend. There's no doubt about it. It's been so good to meet with you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. It's always good to tell a story. I love a good story.
Yeah, is it nice to reflect?
Yeah, it is. It is actually. And there's some things you can say and some things you can't. So yeah, it has been good.